Okay, and we are live. Welcome to another episode of All Things Xbox podcast. Today, once again, I have with me Logan. Logan, how you doing?
Doing great, Jamie. How are you, man?
Good. It's been an interesting week in gaming because we're in that very strange period before, the E3 or the summer showcases where, news is either going to be leaked or it's going to be very slow. But it's exciting times because, again, even though we don't have a traditional E3 this year, it's still exciting. We're having like these showcases. And I think once things get more back to normal, and next year and the year after, we'll go back to having E3 and again and stuff. And hopefully next year I'll be reporting from that place myself. But yeah, we've got a lot of topics today. And the first thing I want to go over isn't, it's kind of gaming related and it isn't at the same time. And this only was brought to my attention last night, and I know a lot of people listening will have seen this on Twitter. Right, we don't like talking about drama on this show, but this kind of needs to be mentioned because it was kind of strange, and I think people really need to learn from this lesson. So, someone from the PlayStation centric community recently, start doing OnlyFans and stuff. And, hey, if anyone wants to earn money that way, I'm not going to judge them. I'm not one to judge people in general. And, this person was doing their thing. And it turns out that this person was using other people's photos and catfishing people, you know? And this was brought to my attention last night, and it's like a lot of these gamers were falling for it. A bit awkward, isn't it, Logan? Because like it was all over Twitter.
Yeah, it was hilarious. It's like I had that person blocked anyway, so I wasn't seeing any of that stuff, but I kept hearing people mention about this catfish and I was like, what's going on? And then I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's this account that was always spewing toxic anti-Xbox rhetoric and this and this and that. And it was just funny because this is like the second high profile one from the Sony community in the last year or so. You have to be very careful, like not just with catfish, but like fake accounts in general. Like especially news. Like you saw the Bloodborne fake out yesterday, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was going to talk about that in a bit, and we're in a time of where we're getting upgrades for all these games, and we'll talk about some of these upgrades later in the show. Uh, you know, there's a lot of like fake rumors and fake news about gaming stuff all the time on Twitter. And Nibel, I think how you pronounce his name, on Twitter is always posting gaming news. Big account on Twitter, and it's always like cool gaming news. Well, someone copied the profile picture, essentially the exact same profile, and it looked like the real account, and posted that Bloodborne was getting a remaster. And it kind of made me sad that I was seeing all the reactions I saw. People were like celebrating that they were going to spend these $70 on this remaster of a last generation game. And it's like all these people should be getting free upgrades. Like we've enjoyed a lot of free upgrades. We're still getting free upgrades. We're getting, free upgrades this week, next week, and it's going to continue. There's like games that came out a few years ago that are going to continue to get upgrades, and they all been for free. Very few developers this generation have charged, for remasters of last gen games. You have Life is Strange Collection, which is technically a last generation remaster of a last generation game. It's not current gen. Like it's optimized for Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro. But like we have things like Sony doing the director's cuts of things because it works for Sony. Them cashing in on those games. But these upgrades should be free across the board, and it's just like that fake rumor spread like wildfire. And the same with the catfishing thing. It's like gamers have to learn. Like before you ever look or react on Twitter, because I was reading the quote tweets, people were excited. Like it's Christmas Day 2.0, and it was fake. Like, and the thing is, they could easily update that game, put it out for a free upgrade, and gamers would be hyped. They'd be celebrating. And the thing is, it would gather a lot of goodwill because every time we get these free upgrades, be it just resolution, frame rate, textures, whatever, like it gathers goodwill and good faith in the publisher and the developers. Look at Cyberpunk. That was celebrated. Like they eventually actually fixed the game, but it's also 4K 60 on Xbox, Series X and PlayStation 5 and stuff, and it was good. But people are celebrating these hypothetical $70 remasters. It's like, We complain all the time as gamers about having to spend money on microtransactions and other things, but people are willing to spend their hard-earned money on games they've already bought. This isn't the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 where those games kind of need to be remastered. I understand remasters from that generation. And hell, like, probably going to talk about this later, but like, there's probably going to be a Gears of War collection. And the reason I'm not against the Gears of War collection is because those games are backwards compatible. You can play the games you already own. And the best thing is that they also frames per second boost and resolution enhanced. At least 3 of them are. So you're having the best of both worlds. You're having the option to buy the remaster or play the games you already own with the free upgrades. And that's the best scenario. But the amount of people that were just celebrating this hypothetical $70 game was like, why? It should be free. Like, it's strange. Hacky Sack just said in chat, like, nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and it is. A lot of people will pay for nostalgia. Whenever I talk about Mass Effect Legendary Edition, I'm thinking about replaying that again as soon as I'm done with Elden Ring. I'm so close to the end, but like, that's a big nostalgia package. I will pay for that. Well, I bought it. I'm probably going to pick it up in physical as well, but like, that game kind of needed to happen. You couldn't play the Mass Effect games on PlayStation because it didn't have backwards compatibility, but now you can. And honestly, I think that game's going to come to Switch this year. That would be a huge boost for the game, and EA will make probably $100 million off it. But yeah, it's strange. Like, I think people just have to be more careful. Like, check who's posting these things, see if it's the actual person, and stop getting catfished. We have a TV show called Catfish, or was it Catfished? Whatever. That was popular for years. Like, learn lessons, people. Like, anyway, let's get into the rest of the game and stuff. Hacky Sack just said in chat, Fable Remaster is my personal pick between that and Gears of War. Look, I think a lot of people would like to see the Fable games remastered. I really think they do. And the thing is, even though those games are backwards compatible, having the option to buy, like, Logan, you would probably be up for a Fable remaster, yeah?
Yeah, in my opinion, honestly, the Fable games need more of a remastered collection than the Gears games, because the first Fable came out on the OG Xbox, and then they kind of had a remake remaster for the 360, and it's been upscaled and boosted, but still it's dated. And then Fable 2 and 3 as well, and especially with the reboot coming, or maybe Fable 4, who knows what they end up calling it, but it would be a perfect time to, kind of help bridge the gap by putting those all together in a shiny new package with some modern mechanics and innovations, and put them out there for a new generation or people like us to re-experience. I'm not against the Gears collection at all. I think it could work, and I think it could be really good, especially if they get it like the MCC, like after launch, not the debacle it was when it launched, but like where you have a seamless package with all the multiplayer, all the campaigns. You can do custom playlists, missions, hop around, whatever. I think it would be really, really cool. I don't think it's necessary because I think the upgrades are really great as is. The BC team they're wizards at what they do. But if they made it and it made a noticeable jump, I'd be down for it. I'd pick it up. I'm a Gears junkie. I love Gears. So between the two, I'd pick Fable. But I definitely wouldn't oppose Gears, and I'd pick it up too.
Yeah, before I go on to talk about why I think these collections are real and probably going to be announced this year, if you're listening and enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I also, I believe now I have super chats turned on, so if you want to support the channel, I have a lot of cool things planned coming in the next coming months and beyond. Anyway, all that advertising stuff out the way. Yeah, I think these collections are happening. Simply because, if you look at the Fable games, for instance, the first game was already remastered, right? It was remastered for the Xbox 360. It was one of the last releases on that console by Microsoft. So they essentially really only have to remaster 2 games and just give the first game, 4K, some 60 frames, HDR, and all that stuff. So that looks like it's likely. And the Gears collection makes a lot of sense because they've already done 1/3 of the package. Gears of War Ultimate Edition is built from the ground up on Unreal Engine 4. Literally all the textures and all the assets are being redone. that's one of those weird games that falls between the blurred line between remake and remaster, because it's not a remake because it runs the exact same way, like story wise, beat for beat, but like the cutscenes have been remade in Unreal Engine 4. It looks like, a really good game. So all you have to do on that is basically bring over the PC version, 4K 60, all that stuff, and do the next two games. And personally, I really think they will do that because one, it's probably going to be an easy job to do. They'd have all the multiplayer in one place, and the Xbox 360 servers, those things are getting old now. I wouldn't be surprised if they shut those off someday, like the Halo games. It just makes sense and have all the maps in one place, and that would sell. Like Gears fans would love that. I'd love that. And personally, Gears of War 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. So I think that's going to happen. And plus, the fact that they have the original games there to begin with, it kind of makes sense because, gamers aren't forced into thinking that they need to buy it. And it's another moneymaker. There's been rumors that we're going to see a Fallout like 3 in New Vegas remaster. That's been around for about a year and a half now, that news, but I should say rumor. But it seems likely. The amount of studios Microsoft has now, the amount of IPs and games they have, it makes sense to put out remasters because it just generates more income. It gives gamers what they want because there are gamers out there that want remasters of stuff, and we have the original games available. It's not like on like PlayStation where you're basically forced to rebuy, let's say, God of War 3 because it's not backwards compatible. But I think Sony will get better at that, and I think these collections will be shown. I think at least the Gears collection is going to be shown June 12th. And anyway, we'll move on because remaster talk can get old quickly. Right, so back to Sony. And here's the thing: this isn't a Sony bashing show, but it's important to talk about this stuff because these companies learn from each other, and that's important. Gamers benefit, when these companies do that. Anyway, so it came out that Sony are going to start putting more games on PC. And now there's nothing wrong with that, Xbox fans have been used to this for years, and it doesn't take anything away from you. There's always been this thought out there that if a game is put on PC, you have it taken away from you. And that's always been a weird thing to say because at the end of the day, you still get to play it. Nothing's been taken away. It's just console war lists. That's all it is. That's all these people do, if something is also on PC, it's taken away an exclusive. But at the end of the day, who cares? Console gamers are going to game on console. It doesn't matter if you're Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. If you stick to consoles, you don't care if they release games on PC, or at least you shouldn't. And here's the thing. If those games do release on PC, on future Microsoft games, and who knows, maybe Nintendo in the future, that generates more income. And likely scenarios where we actually see sequels to games. Because how many times in the past have we seen a game release just on one console, it hasn't done that well, and we don't get a sequel? But we're more likely to get sequels if it's available on PC as well. Like, Logan, what's your thought on the whole PC release strategy thing for Sony?
Well, I think it's been years coming. Like Jim Ryan's a smart guy. He's seen how things are shifting in the industry. He's kind of in a different position than Phil is with his fan base and his ecosystem because he has to do things more gradually because they're kind of just used to a certain way of doing things, and so they've started to gradually, there's the generations talk, and then the old games talk, and then the PC talk, and then, oh, this would devalue the value of our games, and this and this. And then you're slowly backtracking and shifting from all of those and doing them slowly and gradually to where they're basically following a very similar blueprint that Microsoft. Not quite the same, but very similar, just slower and more gradual. And it makes sense to me that they're going to put them on PC. I've never been offended by games being put on PC. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's like it's still a quote console exclusive. I mean, most people have a PC anyway for work or whatever they do, and then some game on it, some don't. So to me, it doesn't take anything away from your platform to make it more available on PC, and you can generate more eyes, more interest in the IP, generate more money, more funds, more revenue for future projects. It just seems like a no brainer to me.
Yeah, you know, every so often on Twitter, I post some random post. I just make a simple tweet about me playing a game, and I always get some random. Being a bit of an arsehat, to be honest. It happens on I want to say a daily basis. And anyway, so how am I linking that with this? Sometimes when these announcements happen or these teasers, like Sony will start releasing things on PC, I look at the comments, and I saw a bunch of comments of people just saying like, "This saddens me." It's like, why? Like nothing's been taken away. And I think Sony themselves and their fan base, they've been so engrossed into like talking about exclusives, right? That's all they do. Like next time you have an argument with someone on Twitter or anything, right? Look at their feed. They don't talk about third-party games or indie games unless they've been on a state of play and there's like some sort of marketing deal. They just talk about exclusives. So that's everything they have, and it's like they use that as like a measuring stick to just like talk about gaming. They just don't talk about games. And when it comes to like Sony putting things on PC, it just makes sense. Like look at the gaming industry over time. The gaming industry's been the same for decades. Nothing ever changed, but every other industry changed. Music back in the before iTunes days wasn't really digital. It was based on CD sales. Then it went to iTunes, and then all these streaming services like Pandora in the US and Spotify, and then television changed with the streaming apps, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Netflix. Books became more of an audio thing, and a digital thing. And movies, a lot of movies are day one digital services now. And the gaming industry just didn't change. Yes, you could buy games digitally, but the games were just, on one device at a time, or if it was a multi-platform game, and nothing really changed. And then, Game Pass came along, and Microsoft changed their strategy. They start releasing on multiple devices like PC and xCloud, and it scared people. Some people in the gaming community just don't like the idea of change, right? But it has to change. Right? It's 2022. We're not going to be playing like Zork off our floppy disks on these consoles. Like it just doesn't make sense. I think it's fine with these PC releases. Like these people that play these games on PC, they don't buy consoles. They don't play games on consoles. Like they prefer playing on their rigs. They buy their expensive graphics cards and CPUs and the fancy PCs to play these games. Like they don't want to fork out money for a console they're just going to use for one or two games. So Sony are going to capitalize on that, as did Microsoft. And I think all this like started when Quantum Break. Like I remember a lot of people know what I'm talking about with this. When Quantum Break was announced to go to PC, I think it was like a month before release. People lost their minds. It's like, what's the point of buying an Xbox if the game's going to be on PC? It was drama. It was like watching a soap opera. People were losing their minds. But at the end of the day, who cares, right? Like these people that were whining don't care now because we get it. We are console gamers. PC gamers are going to game on PC. There are people that game on multiple devices, yeah, but like I don't think Microsoft or Sony will miss out on any console sales due to these games going on PC. It's stupid to think that. It's never going to be a thing. And if people will say for the meme, like, or if the game goes onto PC, there's no point buying PlayStation. People will say that for the meme, but at the end of the day, nobody really thinks that. It's just a meme. Nobody cares. Sony's going to make more money off these different, strategies going forward. And Microsoft learned. Like, look at it like this: PlayStation is outselling Xbox almost completely, but Sony is copying Microsoft's business plan essentially. With the service and putting games on PC, and they will eventually put games day and date in their streaming service, PlayStation Plus Premium Essential Mega Edition. And it's fine. It's fine. Time's changing. It's okay for people to change. Like Logan, you've obviously seen people being scared of the change. I'm doing air quotes for people that can't see me.
Yeah, I kind of made a tweet jabbing about that the other day that some people didn't appreciate. But yeah, like I said that there are a few communities that kind of hysterical over change than the gaming community. Like whether it's a potential publisher being bought or a studio being shut down or a gaming IP being rebooted or revisited or putting our games on PC or we're making a streaming service or whatever. They're just so resistant to change. Like I remember, the kind of shift from storefronts to digital storefronts, and like even some minor things like that, or like play anywhere. How is it controversial or bad at all if I buy a game and I can play it on either my PC or my Xbox? Like, what on earth? I mean, that's like, you buy a Blu ray and it comes with the digital code. I can watch it on my iPad or I can watch it on my TV. I get both. I win either way. Like, how is that a bad thing? Like, that one blew my mind in particular.
Yeah, it just boils down to people being scared of change. Like, if you're an Xbox centric person, like this stuff just means nothing. It's like, oh, it's released on PC, cool. Now I move on with the rest of my day. Nobody really cares, and the people that do care, it's kind of sad if you think about it. Like nothing's being taken away from you. Like it's ridiculous, and these people just have to move on. And the thing is, it's inevitable. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Like, and we can just see people. The thing is, I see more salty replies and stuff to these types of things. Like whenever I talk about my opinions on these types of things on Twitter, I get the angry people. People know what I'm talking about. Like people angry that I'm suggesting that Sony needs to do this, and it's not that Sony needs to do this. It's that Sony wants more money. They're a business. This is how you generate more money. Some gamers have this thing in their head where Sony makes X amount of money and it's good, but it's not. But they don't want them to make more money. It's strange. It's very strange. It's going to happen. Move on with it. Anyway, we'll move on. So two of the games with gold games is kind of leaked and being announced at the same time. So every month, we don't really talk about games with gold much because we know that the quality of games kind of went down. But at the end of the day, it's still games that you're going to get for paying for the games with the gold service. So anyway, it came out today that Avon Colony and Super Meat Boy are going to be the first games for June. Now, normally, at the end of the month, we get all 4 games announced, but they haven't announced them yet, and it's just these 2 games, and some of them are actually available now in some countries. I highly recommend Super Meat Boy. It's a platformer, basically. You play as a little cube of meat that leaves blood on walls, and you can see all your timelines and deaths depending on like when you died, when you finished the game. It's a cool game. Like Logan, you've probably played it, yeah?
Yeah, I love Super Meat Boy. It's a lot of fun. And Avon Colony I have not played, but I like city world builders, so I'll definitely check it out. Major Nelson actually did a few hours ago add the other 2 for the month. He tweeted out there's gonna be a Project High Rise for Xbox One, and Rascals is the other 360 game. So now all 4 are out there.
Alrighty then, because I didn't say that. Well, Avon Colony, if you've ever wanted to pretend to be Elon Musk and make colonies, this is that game. It's kind of like that Surviving Mars game, but I don't think it's as in-depth. It's going to be easy to get into, I think. It's a cool game. I liked it. Personally, I don't have a lot of patience for games like that now. I wish I did because they're cool. But yeah, Avon Colony, I never even heard of the other 2 games, to be honest. But I think at this point, with games with gold games, we know the deal. Like Microsoft puts all their eggs in the Game Pass basket, and other games just come to games with gold. And the thing is, games with gold does get some good games sometimes. But like, if I haven't heard of those other games, and the thing is, if people follow me on Twitter, I talk about games all the time that nobody knows about. But I haven't heard of those other games you mentioned. So,
I've actually heard good things about Rascals, but and Avon Colony and Meat Boy, but the other one I'm not familiar with. So,
yeah,
um, I'll check them out because hey, they come with the service. But games with gold just hasn't been a great stalwart for the company lately.
yeah. I mean, look, again, like I was saying, everyone knows the deal, but it's still more games. And the thing is, we'll just go into the whole Game Pass thing because we got the Game Pass list for early June, and honestly, it looks really good. So first up, we have Space Lines from the Far Out, It looks pretty cool. It's an indie game. Ninja Gaiden Black Collection. That's actually pretty good. I think that only came out a year ago. Disc Room, that's an indie game. For Honor March and Fire Edition, Assassin's Creed Origins, which we'll talk about that, and Chorus, right? That's a bloody excellent list. And the thing is, they have teased that we will find out more games in June. Obviously, we're going to have a big list drop like we do the past few years at the Xbox Game Showcase. But Assassin's Creed Origins, excellent game. You know, a lot of people that probably haven't played Assassin's Creed don't know where to jump into. It's a good jumping in point for people that have never played the series before, because it was basically a soft, I don't want to say a soft reboot, but a soft starting point. You know, after the tragedy of Assassin's Creed Unity, and you know the kind of, I don't want to say a flop of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, because you know the characters in that game are good, but honestly I found the game extremely boring. But Assassin's Creed Origins is a action RPG. It's very much Ubisoft's attempt at making The Witcher, but in ancient Egypt, and it works, and it's a very good game. I know a lot of hardcore Assassin's Creed fans do not like referring to that as an Assassin's Creed game, but it is. It really is. But it's a hell of a game. Like, you've played it, right, Logan?
I actually haven't yet, but I have all the DLCs, expansions. It's in my ever growing backlog, and it's one I do want to play.
Like, that game is, I'll say it's bloody excellent. Like, it's just so good. And while you're playing it, you do kind of get like, okay, they blatantly like Witcher, but it works. And the thing is, Assassin's Creed had to change over time. You know, if you look at the first game, going back to 2007, like the only way you could assassinate other characters was if you were standing directly next to them. You know, the story was very linear, but the open world cities were cool. The parkouring was kind of like a puzzle in itself. But then there was kind of a generational jump with Assassin's Creed 2, because you could assassinate from benches, jump from walls, roofs, assassinate from hay bales, you know, from ledges and stuff. It was such a huge upgrade. Like, literally, you'd think it was a generation above it. You know, Brotherhood, excellent. More of the same in a different city, it worked. Assassin's Creed Revelations, more of the same, different city, good. You know, Assassin's Creed 3 was basically, you know, the American Revolution or something. Good game. I really enjoyed it. Had lots of Red Dead Redemption elements. Then you have Assassin's Creed 4, which was, it's a pirate game, but it's a bloody good one. And then you had Syndicate, Rogue, you know, and Unity, but like Origins is just this really good starting point. It's basically the origins of the Assassins, and it works. It's a great game. It's even got some really cool expansions, and this was before Ubisoft completely leaned into the whole mythical element. Like, there are mythical things in this game, but like the open world is amazing. Like, ancient Egypt in a AAA game, we've never seen before on this scale. You know, you can go inside the pyramids and discover things. It's incredible. It's probably arguably one of the best open world games last generation. You know, there's lots of camels. It's a good game. But the funny thing about that game is we also getting a 60 FPS boost June 12th. No, sorry, June 2nd. And apparently, from what I've seen in some places, I'm not entirely sure, I'll post on Twitter if it's real or not, apparently it will up the resolution on Series X to full 4K, because it was 1600p, I believe, on One X. So, anyway, I'll post about that on Twitter if I find out if it's real. But either way, 60 frames Assassin's Creed, beautiful. And Logan, since you haven't played it, you're going to get the best experience, because again, 60 FPS for Assassin's Creed is just amazing. And, you know, the other game I was going to talk about was Chorus. Like, have you played Chorus yet?
No, I actually picked it up on sale on your recommendation the other day, but I haven't started it yet. It looks really, really cool, though.
Like, the funny thing is, you know, we talk about games we don't see anymore, and we really don't see, I want to say, big budget space combat games. Like, during the PlayStation 1 generation, there were actually quite a few. But like, for the past, like, I want to say 2 generations before that, we didn't really see many. Not really. You know, there's the odd Star Wars Starfighter game, but like, if you wanted a space combat game on a console, you were out of luck, basically. But in the past few years, we got Star Wars Squadrons, incredible game, and we got Chorus, and that, I'm not even kidding, it's better than Star Wars Squadrons, which is saying a lot. It's kind of got light RPG elements, it's just pure space combat. And I want to say this for people that are looking forward to it. It kind of has this weird Assassin's Creed 3 starting. You know, at the beginning of Assassin's Creed 3, you play as a different character that isn't even on the cover, and it kind of throws you for a loop. Like, you don't really know when the game's going to start properly. Well, the main mechanic in Chorus is drifting. You know, did you ever watch Battlestar Galactica, Logan?
I watched some of the OG series back in the day, but it's been a hot minute since I've seen any Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, so basically, there's this movement you can do in Battlestar Galactica, or what the Star Pilots do, and you can do in Chorus, and I'm not even kidding, it's one of the coolest things in video games. Basically, you cut your engines while you're traveling in one direction. You can spin the ship around in whatever direction you want while you're carrying forward with the momentum, so you can shoot behind you as you like go in the direction you were heading. It's excellent. It's amazing. But the thing is, whenever you see a trailer for Chorus or gameplay, people use that mechanic. The first ship you have in that game doesn't have that, and it just kind of controls kind of like this generic space shooter. But when you get the new ship and you have that like the drift mechanic, it kind of makes the game good, if that makes sense. So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter that have started that game. They complain about the flying and how it doesn't feel right because you have to get the second ship. So if you play for about, I think it's maybe an hour, you get the second ship, and it's wonderful. Honestly, it's one of the best games from last year. Easy top 10 for me. But yeah, incredible. People will get to play that on Xbox Series X and S. And it also got a ray tracing mode, I believe, 2 or 3 months ago, so people can play that. And the thing is, it's got high performance mode and all that stuff. But yeah, excellent game, and I think people are really going to enjoy it because, again, we don't see space combat games that often now. And yeah, also Ninja Gaiden Black. Apparently the performance of that's really good as well. Yeah, we'll move on. Right, so I want to talk about Japanese games. Now, today a game was announced, and I think a lot of people have seen this. It's called The Legend of Heroes: Trails from Zero. Coming this fall, 2022, to all platforms. Isn't that exciting, Logan? It's coming to all platforms. And all those
Does that mean Xbox?
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? I think everyone should be excited. All platforms, so exciting. That includes PlayStation 4, Switch, PC. What the hell? Like, what is all platforms? Like, this is what I want to talk about. Like, like a lot of the comments of that announcement was like, really, all platforms? It's coming to iPhone, Switch. It's coming to Android phones. It's coming to your grandmother's microwave, but not Xbox. Like, this is a thing now, and I've noticed it a lot with a lot of these Japanese games. And the thing is, I see on Twitter all the time of people in Japan buying Xboxes, especially the Series S. And people love that console. It's tiny. A lot of apartments in Japan are small, so having a small, console out there, it makes sense. But like, not porting these games to Xbox, and I don't like using the whole lazy dev rhetoric, right? I think it's a stupid thing to get out there, but I'm going to put it out there. It's lazy that they're not porting these games over. These consoles we have now are basically PCs. It's x86 architecture. They just have to, mess around with the APIs and stuff, put achievements in, and boom, you have a Japanese game on Xbox. But they just keep missing the opportunity to put these games on console. What's your thought on this? Because, like, I'm angry. Like, I never heard of this game before, but the prospect of it's coming to all consoles, all platforms, but not Xbox. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of bull. It's dumb. I mean, I don't use that lightly. I mean, like NIS, Atlas, there's been a few other repeat offenders that make games and they say, oh, it's coming to all platforms. And then you look in the fine print, Xbox isn't included. Or some publications like Game Informer or some other places post a tweet about a game coming out, and then you have to look and hunt and peck for it to find out if it actually is coming to Xbox or not. Like, they just don't even bother including it. And it's just so weird. And then, like, they always say, speak up if you want these games on on your platform. So Xbox fans do speak up and they say, hey, I would like to get this game on this platform. Can we please have this on our platform? And then you get marauded by some randos on Twitter that, for some reason, find it morally reprehensible that to even have the audacity to suggest that a Western console could have these games and that it's a right for us and you're not worthy and this and this. Just a whole bunch of bullcrap, and it's so weird, and the whole vibe is just like Xbox has made a lot of progress, but this is something that they still have a very steep hill to climb, and I don't know how they can overcome it. They can, but it's going to take a lot to do it.
It happens all the time, and we've talked about this in the past, and I've mentioned this on other podcasts, that I honestly believe that these Japanese developers, not all, but some, they are willing to put their games on Xbox if they paid up front for Game Pass. Like, that's what I honestly believe. Like, they want the easy money up front right there and then. You know, it happens all the time now. All these games just missing the platform. It's like Atlas are finally putting a game on Xbox this year via Soul Hackers 2. Still need to see gameplay of that in some English dub, but we probably will see that over the summer. But like this is happening all the time. They keep saying all platforms. There was a game, I think it was the Legend of Mana series or something. The remasters, like that's on Amazon Luna, Stadia, your mobile phone, the microwave, your washing machine, not Xbox. It's happening all the time. And I don't like it's these developers' jobs to put the games on the platforms and advertise it. Yet they don't. They just want to be. This is just a speculation. I think they want to be paid up front for Game Pass. Like it just looks like that to me. And it's probably going to continue. Unless we see a lot more consoles sell in Japan. I don't see it happening anytime soon. It's like I don't know, Logan. Do you think there's any like truth in that, and them like wanting to just like put these games in Game Pass just for an easy check?
Um, with the obvious caveat that I don't have access to that kind of information or that behind the scenes. Like I could totally see a scenario where yes, that there is one that could be ready to go on short notice, and they're just waiting for Uncle Phil to show up at their door with a bag of cash, and then poof, that game magically appears on Xbox. I could totally see scenarios where there are some Japanese publishers, um, maybe Square Enix among them, that have some titles that would be very wanted on the platform, but they're expecting a very nice payday to grace Xbox with their presence. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it definitely looks that way. And one of the reasons I always talk about Elden Ring, other than the fact it's an amazing game, like that's a Japanese game, and it's selling millions on Xbox platforms. Why is it selling, millions? Is it because it's just an amazing game? Yeah. Is it because it was marketed correctly? Like the marketing for that said pretty much all platforms. People knew what the game was, and it was just done right. But whenever I see a publisher complain about sales of their game on Xbox consoles, like they don't factor in the fact that the marketing wasn't there. Like let's look at Final Fantasy VII remake, right? And that comes over to Xbox hypothetically. A lot of people want that to happen. Final Fantasy VII is a game that people have known since they were children. They've heard about it since the game probably came out before they were born, but they've heard of it. That game would succeed on Xbox platforms. People know what it is. It's a known quantity. But like when a Japanese game comes out on an Xbox platform and it's not marketed, gamers have no reason to buy it at all. Especially when these games don't come out regularly on Xbox. Like if you're an Xbox centric gamer that only plays on Xbox or mainly plays on Xbox, you're not exposed to the genre almost at all. Hell, the first Kingdom Hearts game that we got on Xbox was 3 in a series that was notorious for its complex story. And gamers were expected to buy that, and then wait 2 years for the remasters of the collection from PlayStation 2. But it's like gamers are just expected to dive in, not knowing what's up, and that's silly. Like that doesn't make any sense. And it just came out recently that Final Fantasy 15 sold 10 million copies. That's available on PC, Xbox and PlayStation. Like that game sold well. It sold well because it's on multiple platforms, and I don't know, man. Like, I think it's something that will hopefully change because again, I've noticed that, especially over the past 2 years. So like, Xbox gamers are wanting more Japanese games on their platform. You know, we're probably going to see that. Hopefully, the new Kingdom Hearts game on Xbox. We may even see that over like the Xbox Summer Showcase. But it's just something that needs to improve, and it's like the developer side. Gamers just need to keep talking about it. Keep talking about this stuff on Twitter and like Facebook or whatever. Like, these developers do listen, you know. The reason we've had some Japanese games come to Xbox in the past is because of people making fan art. Like, I heard that the Kingdom Hearts collection came to Xbox surely because of all the people on Twitter talking about it. People were making fan art and like hyping, wanting these games over. Like, I was one of those people that were talking about this game we need on Xbox, and we got it. But yeah, it's a situation that needs to change. And again, like, Sony has a lot of pull over there. They probably have deals with a lot of developers to like not have their games come over, even if it's not like a heavily marketed title. But yeah, we'll move on. It's just sad, man. Like, all consoles really, and just missing out Xbox. It's strange. Um, Now Scorn. Scorn's a very creepy game that we've been looking forward to a while. And you know, basically, if you're familiar with the Aliens movies or H.I. Geiger, the artist, very organic looking art, you know, phallic looking things. uh,
Slightly,
yeah,
yeah.
just slightly, you know, very gross looking game, but it works because that's what it's meant to be. But anyway, the game is slated to come out later this year. It was originally meant for October, I believe. I don't know if that's changed, but you wanted to talk about that, right, didn't you, Logan?
Yeah, the devs have put out a message that they are on track, their teams, for the October release date. They put that out the other day. And I had actually reached out to the Scorn devs and asked if they were going to make a physical edition or not because we've talked about limited run games and stuff on here a few times. Like, I like to collect physical games personally, if I can, especially if there's like a steelbook or a soundtrack or art or collectible, whatever paraphernalia you want to throw with it. Um, so I reached out just out of curiosity. I was like, hey, is this going to be a digital only or is there a chance it could be physical? And they were really nice and courteous, and they were like, currently it's, planned to be digital only for, Series XS and PC, but we are evaluating our options, and they mentioned that they are going to release a vinyl for the game, like the soundtrack or score or whatever, and that they are evaluating their options. So that tells you that they are listening, and if enough people, are polite and reach out and say, hey, I would like a physical edition of this for my platform, then it sounds like they're listening. So just another sign that, be respectful but make your voice heard, and that these studios are listening. And I'm really looking forward to it. It looks grotesquely disturbing yet amazing at the same time. Like, it makes you feel uncomfortable but energized as well. It just, I don't know. It's one of my most anticipated games for sure.
Yeah, that game's going to be like technically marvelous. I want to say because like that game was first announced in, I want to say, 2017. They had a Kickstarter. They pretty much announced. I think it was maybe the same month Xbox Series X was announced that it's going to be next gen only. You know, they aiming for the highest fidelity possible on console, so it's going to be 4K 60 frames, 4K textures, all that stuff. But it may be using Xbox Direct storage as well. They didn't actually say if it's going to use that on console or just PC. They just said direct storage and just posted the eyes emoji, which usually means something, you know. But basically, you're gonna have like some super high resolution assets loaded in really fast, which means the game's gonna be gorgeous. And if you watch the little clips they have and the little developer stuff they have on YouTube, that game is stunning. Like, it's gross, it's extremely hard to look at, and everything looks moist. Like, everything in that game is wet. And yeah, it's a gross looking game, but it looks good. You know, it's basically an FPS survival horror shooter, but it looks cool. And that's gonna be a day one Xbox Game Pass game. It's going to be a huge game that we don't really see. I want to say grotesque first person horror games that have like a big budget. But yeah, it looks good. I think more people need to pay attention to that. And while we were talking about, let's jump into the whole Aspire thing. So Aspire is making the Knights of the Old Republic remake and all that stuff. We're not really talking about that. So Aspire port a ton of Star Wars games from previous generations, and it's a successful, business venture for them. They do make money from this. And it came out today that they're going to be porting over Knights of the Old Republic 2 to the Nintendo Switch. So this is where people come in asking, why not Xbox? Because Microsoft, they own the company that made it. KOTOR 2 is already on Xbox, so why? And I heard about a year ago or so that the reason we see some Star Wars games by Aspire on Xbox, but not all, is because the games Aspire makes, these ports, are just ports. They aren't listed as remasters. So let's talk about Knights of the Republic. It's also on Switch and PlayStation, with widescreen and trophies. But on Xbox, we have the original version, the original Xbox version, and it supports, 4K enhancements. But the version by Aspire is not a remaster. It's not 4K, it's not 60 frames or any of that stuff. It's just a direct port with widescreen. And because of that, Microsoft, apparently, from what I've heard, Microsoft doesn't allow direct ports of existing games on the store if they already exist. So if it was listed as KOTOR Remaster by Aspire Games, it would be on Xbox. But apparently, since it's just a port, from what I've heard, the games can't come over. Now, a lot of people just love Star Wars. Like, you love Star Wars, I love Star Wars. Star Wars is huge, A lot of older games were great, But I think this is something we somehow have to get changed. Or, like, even if they listed these games as remasters, they'd come over just by the name alone. But the fact that they are just straight up ports, listed as ports, and nothing more, we can't see them on Xbox. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, this one's kind of a touchy subject. It just, on one hand, I get that, if it's just a port, um, then why ban it? But if you already have the OG version and it actually looks better on Series X, enhanced and all the what the BC team does compared to the port, then you're like, well, duh, I'll just prefer the original version because it's enhanced and everything. I think what really irritates people is that there's more widescreen and that there's trophies support for them that the OG ones do not. The OG ones look and run better, but they are missing something that these have. And then the fact that they kind of pick and choose which Star Wars games can even come to Xbox. Like, for example, you're always throwing out there Bounty Hunter. I'd love to see Bounty Hunter come to Xbox. And there, as far as I remember, there was no OG Xbox version of that game. So I don't see why there should be a problem for that one to be ported over. Or they've mentioned that Rogue Squadron, they would like to do a collection of those. I'd buy that day one if they made that for Xbox. And it just raises more a fuss about the achievement idea for OG titles and how I think they really, really need to take a hard look at actually doing that, especially for games made by their first party studios or that are considered, in that S tier of legacy titles associated with the platform, like the Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, for example.
100 just said in chat, why do we care? I care because I love Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I love Star Wars, and unfortunately, unlike the original the original Xbox, GameCube, and PS2 generations, there were I want to say at least 10 Star Wars games a year, and a lot of them were.
Masterclass.
Yeah, it was a great generation for Star Wars games, but in the past generation, we had the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, we had Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and Star Wars Squadrons. That was it, and we had about the same in the previous generation, and people want to replay these games. I love Knights of the Old Republic, right? And and this is the thing, I've got it on my shelf. In fact, I own 4 copies of it. For some reason, whenever I see that game in a store, I buy it. I don't know why.
I don't blame you, man.
That scene in Indiana Jones where he's like, that belongs in a museum. That's what I'm like with KOTOR. I love that game. But
No, it's so good.
but unfortunately, I really really find it hard to play games that aren't widescreen. I think other people might feel the same way. Like if I'm playing a game that's in what 6:9 format or whatever it was, like letterbox, like I just can't play it. It's so annoying, and it's like I can play games where you're basically playing as pixels, right? I can play as games with original PlayStation One, Xbox graphics, GameCube graphics or whatever. But if I'm asked to play a game in 9:6 or whatever that format was called, I can't stand it. I really can't. Like I love the Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, but the fact it was technically 9:6 or whatever it is, like that really got to me. I was like, can I just zoom in on this, like the center bit, like, but it really bothered me. Love that film though, but like I find it extremely difficult to play those games. I just can't do it. And the fact that I would love to play KOTOR with achievements, right? Could I get KOTOR when I get a PlayStation? Of course, but to me, I don't like trophies. Do you know what trophies feel like to me? They feel like what they are, a cheap knockoff. Like, I'll put it out there. I don't like whenever I played Metal Gear Solid 4 or the Uncharted games, I never cared about those trophies popping. Like I didn't really care. It's like, oh, this one's a silver one. This one's a gold. That's like I don't care. Like it just felt like whenever I buy, I don't know, cheese, right? I want to buy the proper Cheshire cheese. I don't want to buy the knockoff because I know it's different. I know it's the knockoff. It tastes different, and I feel that way with trophies. That will annoy some people.
I know. Hashtag slander. They're coming for you, Jamie.
But the thing is, PlayStation's done some really good things over the years, but like trophies for me aren't one of them. Like I just can't stand trophies. Uh, but yeah, although I do think that there is like a redeemable quality of things like achievements and trophies. Like I wish they had an achievement system. It's fun to earn those things. You can get achievements on Steam, and I think you can get achievements in Google Stadia. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a cool thing to have. But yeah, people just want more Star Wars games, and as you were saying, and I talk about it all the time, Star Wars Bounty Hunter on the PlayStation 2 has never been on Xbox. So if that gets ported by Aspire, I can almost guarantee it's going to be on Xbox. Look at Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer. That was the N64 game. That is on Xbox at the minute. It's actually, I think it's about £16, so it might be like $20 or something. But like you can get it. Apparently from what I've heard, it's 4K, so that might be like their first 4K port. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it's a weird situation. It's like a strange publishing thing with Microsoft, but I think it's something they could change. Look at for the longest time we didn't have limited run games on Xbox. We already have one game announced for Xbox this summer, and we're going to find out more. So limited run games, that situation was corrected. I think the Aspire thing can be fixed. And even if they don't want to fix it, they could just slap the word remaster on it, and it's allowed. Like from what I've heard, that is the reason. It's strange, but again, that generation, the original Xbox, PlayStation, and GameCube, we saw tons of Star Wars games. They weren't all good, I'll admit. I had a game on PlayStation 2, Star Wars Bombard Racing. It was a Mario Kart knockoff, and it was terrible. Like that game.
Is that the one with the giant heads and
Yep.
everything?
Yep.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that game was not good. Like if that came out today, it would make sense with like online capabilities and stuff. But when you're just driving around these empty tracks with like seven other like AI characters, it didn't feel right. It wasn't a good time. But there are other games that came out that generation. I think Star Wars Obi-Wan that came out in the original Xbox. People can debate whether that was a good game or not. But like look at the N64. We had Shadows of the Empire. That game was great back in the day. That was one of the games we rented from Blockbuster a lot, but like that game was great. There was also a Star Wars Episode 1 game on the original, or should I say the N64, but like the fact we could see these ports down the line, it's just the ones that we already have on Xbox, we can't see yet. So hopefully that situation will change. And yeah, we'll just move on to the next topic. Right, so EA and Apple. This has been going around the news a lot. the whole talk of acquisitions has been the talk of the town since Microsoft bought Bethesda. That's all people talk about. Who's buying what, when, how, and why. And, EA last year came out and said, we are not looking to be acquired. We are looking to acquire. So a lot of people thought, okay, their games from now on to the end of time are going to be on all platforms. Their sports games, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, all that stuff. Well, it just came out last week that they are looking to be purchased or, be invested in by like a big company. And it turns out the big companies looking at EA is Apple, CBS, I believe, and Amazon.
Disney.
Disney as well, yeah. And like, oof, like honestly, I think Disney would be a good pick just because I think they would still put the games on all platforms. Amazon, Amazon has a publishing, deal with Xbox and PlayStation as well as far as I'm aware. So we will see Amazon made games on Xbox and PlayStation, like Lost Ark probably in the future. But like CBS, like I'm not from the US. I don't really know what they own and all that stuff, so I can't really speak on them. Uh, but Apple, now I want to talk about this because this is where one of my rants start. I own Apple phones, like I use iPhones. That's just the phone I use. I like the UI. I just like the usability of them. I'm not a huge Apple person. My TV is Samsung. My PC is Windows. I game on Xbox consoles. My preference for phone is just iPhone. I use it for Twitter. I use the camera app and the Messenger app. That's pretty much it. And when I saw that, I just kind of like had this moment, realization. It's like it's happening because there's been a rumor for the past 2 years that Apple's getting into the console game again because they came out with their 4K Apple TV, I believe it was 2 years ago, and you can pair a controller with it. You can actually pair a PlayStation and Xbox controller with it, and it works, and you can play certain games with them. And you can play a lot of different games on Apple TVs. And then they came out with, Apple Arcade. Now, the crappy thing about Apple Arcade is that when a developer signs a deal with Apple, they can't have their game on the store so you can buy it. You can only play it if you subscribe to Apple Arcade, which is a bit crappy because like I was going to buy Ocean Horn 2. You can't. You have to play it via Apple Arcade. And, them getting more and more into the gaming space, like the rumor of them making a console sounds very likely now, especially with them being interested in EA. Because that would give them Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Battlefield, like those franchises alone give them what they need to get started because they'd have the action RPGs. They'd have the deep story-driven RPGs. They'd have their shooter, right? And the sports games would also be on there as well. Although I will say sports games have to be multi-platform as far as I'm aware. Just the way the deals are done. But all in all, Apple would release a console and EA would be making games basically exclusively for it. Now, before I continue to rant and lose my mind of the prospect of losing Mass Effect, what's your thought on the whole EA getting bought out by Apple, even though it's just a rumor for now?
On the surface, I think it's a pairing that makes sense. Not necessarily for the better of the gaming industry, but I can see where it makes sense for both parties to merge or to be acquired because, you know, Apple has been wanting to get into gaming. EA has a sizable catalog of IPs, both dormant and current. They make quite a bit of money. They're one of the largest publishers. And so, and Apple is one of the few companies on earth with like the Microsoft levels of, just like throw bags at money at whatever you want to. So they could definitely afford to just buy them in cash and just be done. And then you could, adapt these IPs for Apple TV to, have television shows, have movies, yada, yada, yada. Kind of like Netflix is starting to do with some anime and other games, and Sony is starting to do, and Xbox has dabbled in a little bit with the Fallout show coming, and then the Halo series and the Gears of War movie if it ever gets out of purgatory. Um, so and then, they want to make their own console. Like they've been poaching some Xbox devs among other industry hardware and tech specialists to where they're working behind the scenes on something. So, getting a major publisher and then having a huge library to automatically, just attach and associate with your platform, that's a system seller for some folks. Like, they wouldn't make the sports games. I don't think exclusive. I think that would raise a lot of issues. MLB basically told Sony, like, look, if you want to keep making this baseball game, you're going to make it multi-plat, or we're taking it. And so they did. They finally allowed it to come to Xbox, and so now you have a Sony game on Xbox. But they just it makes a lot of sense. Like, I think if like the idea of Dead Space or Mass Effect or Jade Empire, Dragon Age, or all these games being locked behind an Apple platform kind of sucks. But I could see also where, Apple does have the money and the capabilities to support them and make it really good if they get their head straight on it. That's the thing. It could either be really, really good or it could be really, really bad. It's just I don't know. It's such a volatile industry. It's up in the air. I personally, my favorite pick would be for Disney to get them because instead of Apple TV, you have Disney Plus. That whole IP argument for that. I already know EA well from Star Wars stuff and from licensing other things. They have good relationships with both Sony and Xbox. I'm confident things would remain just as is, multi-plat, just more support. But to me, that's the one to root for. But I understand the idea of why Apple would get them and why it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean Disney. I think Disney and Amazon for me make the most sense. Disney, I think Disney wouldn't really like do anything internally to EA. I think they just fund them. I think Disney would love to have the intellectual properties of like Dragon Age and Mass Effect because then they'd have more stuff to have on the streaming app. But it's scary because like here's the thing, like Apple developed their own silicon now. They don't get stuff from Intel anymore. The Apple M1 chip is super powerful. You know, but when it comes to gaming, like people have thought, like what would that be like in the gaming space? And you know, Apple are working all over the place at the minute. They're working on vehicles such as smart cars and all that stuff. They're working on VR, apparently smart glasses as well. But gaming kind of makes the most sense for them because they're not in that space. Like they got into the television streaming space because all these other companies were making millions, or should I say billions, or promised to make billions, and it's like another business venture for them to make more capital. And I honestly don't like the idea of it. Like again, I use Apple for iPhones. That is it. And the thing is, if you think about it, look at the console space. You have Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony. They all come out with these consoles that are pretty much affordable. I can't see Apple putting out a plastic box that costs $500 minimum. I cannot see that ever happening. I could see them putting out maybe something that's $800 and it's made of aluminium, or aluminum for the American folk. Um, I don't know. It's weird. Like I'm excited because I'm gonna get years like Dragon Age, or apparently a Dragon Age and Mass Effect in the future. Those games are in development, but like the thought of playing those on an Apple device kind of sickens me. like like I just this is a future I don't want to see. Like I'd rather Sony buy a year. That's coming from me. I don't like the idea. And the thing is, I don't think there's space for a fourth console manufacturer. And I'm leaning towards this being a real thing because, again, the rumor's been around for 2 years. The thing is, Apple stuff leaks all the time. Everything they make is not a surprise. AirTags leaked 2 years before they came out, and they basically something the size of a coin. Nobody really cares about something that tracks luggage. But it leaked. Everything leaks when it comes to Apple, and I'm leaning towards this being true. I don't know, and I think Disney also, they like you're saying, they also have the capital to like just straight up buy EA because they have like Microsoft money basically. Um, I just don't want it to happen. I don't want them to buy Apple to buy EA again. Mass Effect on an Apple device. No, thank you. Like that's happened before. Like there was Mass Effect Infiltrator on iPhone back in 2012, but outside of that, I just don't want it to happen. Like I don't see it happening. Like, can you imagine them putting a console out in 2022 with a disc drive and that console's made of plastic? Is this just me reading too much into it, or I don't know?
Um, I don't know. On one hand, I agree with you, and I think an Apple console, in theory, could be rather expensive. But then I look at their product line, and I'm like, they have all these different iPhone models under the sun. You've got a Plus this, or an S this, or an X, or a C, and they have different, price ranges and different features and this and that. So I could see theoretically a scenario where they have like one console that's less powerful, one console that's more powerful, one that's got a disk drive, one that doesn't have a disk drive. This one's made out of this one's made out of this. I could see them get kind of crafty with it because that's what they do generally. But on the other hand, they're not experienced in the gaming sector. And that's why I know some people, roll their eyes at the idea of Xbox being some white knight for the industry. But it is true in some regards that why Phil, jumped in on Bethesda and Activision when he did. He saw, Apple is gearing up in the shadows. Tencent is gobbling everything in their path. And, Amazon is lurking and all these other companies wanting to get into the gaming business. It's bigger than Hollywood now. There's tons of money and interest and subscriptions, everything. So the fact that Phil jumped in on those to keep them preserved in the gaming industry as is and to make them better, because he's like, look, I trust Nintendo and I trust Sony. They know what they're doing. They may do different things than we do, but at the end of the day, they have the gaming business industry at their heart of their business and what they're about. These other companies I don't trust. So on one hand, I see that. On the other, I see Apple and Disney and whoever generally have a good track record and a lot of other stuff. So I don't know. I could see it either way, honestly.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have nightmares about Apple buying EA because like just Mass Effect taken away from me. I just can't have that. Or Dragon Age. Um, you know, I just can't imagine Battlefield on an Apple device. Actually, that's going to happen with Battlefield Mobile, but that's a different thing for another day. But yeah, we'll move on. I just hope it never happens. Anyway, we'll move on. Uh, so the Xbox Series S. A lot of people in my feed will have seen this today. A lot of people have seen for the past few months that the Xbox Series S doesn't count apparently as a next gen console. We've heard this for the past year and a half since the console
It's a
was out.
boombox.
Yeah, and like a lot of people just like angry at the prospect that this console's selling well because it's cheap, and that it doesn't count because it's weaker than the Series X. And I have to say, right, that has to be one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard in the history of gaming. Like they announced a next gen console that's capable of ray tracing. It has 120 frames per second games on the thing. It's like one of my mates who's probably listening right now. He has an Xbox Series S. He plays shooters at 120 frames per second, and he's the type of person that used to go mad over resolution. Like he'd really want 4K and all that stuff, but he got the cheaper console. It does what he wants it to do, with the frames per second games and stuff. But people keep saying like it's not next generation console. And it's like the Xbox Series consoles are selling well, right? We had a time where Xbox is selling well, PlayStation selling well, Nintendo's selling well. This isn't the beginning of last generation where Microsoft were getting outsold 4-1 and people thought it could have been the end of Xbox. This is a different time. All three platforms are succeeding, but that success has made some people question why the console's selling well or if they should sell so well. And even if the console should be, counted as a next gen platform. And I have to say, like, that take has to be one of the worst, dumbest takes I've ever heard. It makes no sense. How can a console that's capable of ray tracing and something like Watch Dogs Legion and have like Call of Duty at 120 frames per second be considered last gen? Like, you've probably seen this, right? Like, what's your thought on it being a last gen console? Apparently,
It's just it's a flawed logic argument to suggest it's not next gen. Does it play games that the other previous gen can't, like Series X, Series S games? Yes. Is it next gen? Then yes. It does it, have frame rates, different enhancements, different accessibility options, things that the other console did not, the One X or the S or the original one. Yeah, so it is a next gen console. Period. Just because they made two of them and a very brilliant stroke that they made the Series X for the hardcore guys like you and I and others who, want the premium experience, like, up to the nth degree with hooked up to a 4K screen, whatever. And then they made for the general populace who just want next gen gaming goodness and they don't care. If it has, 100% all the bells and whistles. They just want to experience it. It's smaller, it's affordable, it comes bundled, you can get Game Pass, whatever, and it's a next gen gaming box and it's a great value. And speaking, we talked about Japanese games earlier, but Wario64 tweeted the other day that there's now a bundle that comes with Elden Ring for the Series S, which is really interesting and shows that there is clearly interest in Japanese games doing well on Xbox. That the fact that they're putting Elden Ring with a Series S in a bundle now, that's a really good sign. It is a next gen console, point blank, and the suggested is just salty.
Yeah, you're right. It is salt. And here's the thing, like, you know, I've seen the different arguments about it, but like, it's a cheaper next gen console. Like, that's all it is. It doesn't do 4K and every scenario. And the thing is, the Series S does have some 4K games, but it just like I think success for Microsoft in the gaming space still scares some people, even if they used to be on the gaming like Xbox side of things and they, switched the preferred platform. But it's like I don't know. It's a dumb argument that all because it's a weaker console, it's a last gen machine. Like that makes no sense. And the fact that it shouldn't be counted is an even dumber statement. Like, does that mean we don't count the Xbox One X or PlayStation 4 Pro for last gen games? No, no, we count it because it makes sense. It's like Microsoft did a bold strategy, right? Like, look at Sony. They came out with the PlayStation 5, I should say, announced it, right? They announced that it was basically the follow up to their successful PlayStation 4, and they did one or two things. Or should I say they did one certain thing. They came out with the PlayStation 5 and they came out with the digital edition. They are charging $100 more for a disc drive, right? That didn't really make anyone pause and think, wait a minute, they actually charging $100 for a disc drive. These disc drives and these machines, by the way, cost about $15 to manufacture tops, not a penny more. But it's $100 disc drive, and it's fine. Apparently, I have no problem with it, but that's their way of doing it. But Microsoft, and this was before the pandemic and all this stuff, like Microsoft didn't know. They came out with a console that was hugely powerful and all this stuff, and they came out with a smaller, cheaper box that they can get into more hands. And that worked out better for them because that chip needs less transistors, meaning they can get more consoles out easier. And it just lined up perfectly with, the manufacturing issues all these companies are having at the minute with the pandemic and stuff. And it's like they made a bold move, having two different, how should I say it, do two different units, and it's working out for them. The Series S is taking off really well in some countries. There are people that are going to prefer the Series X because they want the high resolutions and stuff. But like, I don't understand the anger over it. Like the Series S just angers some people, But again, it was a bold move. The Series S was announced a month before pre-orders or something like that, or just before the pre-orders went live, and it's like they announced a console basically within weeks or whatever of selling it. Like that was a bold strategy for them, and it may not have even worked, but it did, and it just angers some people. I just think the prospect of Microsoft doing good in the gaming space still scares people. And honestly, that's kind of sad. like Microsoft's made some good moves over the past, I want to say 20 years. They made online gaming in the multiplayer space popular on console. They made digital purchases popular on console. And the list goes on. Like their IPs have gotten bigger. Halo has a TV show. Halo was an event with every single game release, every single time. The Xbox 360 was massive. Again, online store, multiplayer, achievements, the controller, which is copied basically by everyone else other than Sony. And it's a good design. It works, and people are just scared still. People are scared of Microsoft succeeding in 2022. They've been around for remember when the original Xbox was out? People were saying, "Oh, Microsoft wouldn't make another console after that." And then the Xbox 360 comes out and it's a huge success, despite the Red Ring of Death scenario. People said there will never be another Xbox, and we got another one. And that was an even worse situation because, again, Microsoft lost a lot of momentum, and now Microsoft have gotten that momentum back. They are selling consoles by the millions. Like you were saying, they have a console in Japan bundled with Elden Ring, which is arguably the biggest game of the year. And it just scares and angers people. These PlayStation, and I never see Nintendo fans angry about Xbox Online. By the way,
they're pretty indifferent.
yeah, it's like oh, they're gonna continue to buy their Switches and Nintendo games, but I never see them angry about Microsoft just existing. But PlayStation fans, I just call them fanboys, they just don't like the idea of Microsoft succeeding. They just don't. And it's kind of strange. I live in a world where I want all three to succeed. If Sony succeeds, Microsoft succeeds. And they just help each other. Like that's how we get better content and better services and hardware. Because, look, let's face it, if PlayStation 4 was not more powerful than the original Xbox, we wouldn't have the Series X as powerful as it is. Microsoft learned their lessons. They knew that they can't have a weak console out again. That's their only choice, Like the One X. If you go back and watch the launch show for the One X, the people over at Microsoft, Major Nelson and AC Bongos and stuff, they were acting like it was a brand new Xbox launch. Everyone was excited. I was excited. People were excited that we were going to get this new type of experience on a console. And I'll move into the next topic with this. The One X was huge because it fixed the resolution issues. We didn't have resolution gate anymore. And people were hyped. People, and there are also people that didn't care about the One X. They didn't care about the resolution gate stuff. But the One X, to this day, it's still an amazing console. That GPU and that thing is a beast. But that console fixed a lot of issues. Microsoft saw an opportunity to provide for different player bases. There's the people like me that want the Ultra 4K and all that stuff and all the shiny stuff. And there are gamers that just don't care. They just want a console to play games on. And the Series S does that and more. And it's fine. They're going to succeed. And who knows, maybe next generation Sony comes out with two different types of console, one powerful, one weaker. It's just going to happen. Just because Sony does something doesn't mean Microsoft has to do it. People say that about Game Pass, remember? Every time someone suggests that Sony copies Game Pass, they say Sony doesn't need to copy Game Pass and Microsoft. Well, Microsoft doesn't have to copy. Microsoft could have did two different consoles, both the same power, and one being charged $100 more for a disk drive. Is that okay then? It's just weird. People have all these different just arguments and stuff about the Series S and stuff. It's just dumb. It's really dumb. People stop suggesting that's a last gen console. It's dumb. Anyway, we'll move on. So in the past week or two, we've seen reports that TCL, the American television manufacturer, are coming out with these basically factoid sheets of what they think they're going to be providing for over the next few years. Now, Logan, you know where I'm going with this, yeah?
Yeah, are we getting a big next gen mid fresh, for like a Series X Pro or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been the talk of the town. People are making content. And here's the thing. If you talk about hardware on YouTube, you get more views, right? If you put a console in the thumbnail, you get more views. It's almost guaranteed. So people are going to be talking about it. Now, I'm not talking about the whole, mid-gen refresh thing. I'm not going to be making videos about it right now because they don't exist. They won't exist. And they won't for years. And here's why. In 2016, 4K televisions started to become more of a thing. But there wasn't much content out there. Some manufacturers of Blu-rays start manufacturing 4K discs. That's when Microsoft came out with the One S. It had a 4K Blu-ray drive, but it couldn't do 4K gaming. And then we had the One X in 2017. 2017 was a huge bump in 4K content, not just Blu-rays but games. There was a reason there was a surge in 2016 and 17 of 4K televisions worldwide, because we actually had 4K content. But to this day, and I'm guessing it's the same in the US, a lot of television channels don't even do full HD. It's 720p content, just standard definition television content. So the fact that people are talking about now that these mid-gen refreshes are going to come out next year or the year after, laughable by the way, in the time where we're in a worldwide chip crisis, because again, car manufacturers, PC manufacturers, graphics card manufacturers and console manufacturers can't make the products they want because there's next to no transistors to get, right? So TCL basically did a guesstimate of when they're going to be providing, 8K televisions for and all this stuff. And they basically predicted that the Xbox Series Pro or XY or whatever it would be called, and the PlayStation 5 Pro will be coming out in 2023, 2024. That was a guesstimate. And ever since they came out with that slide, I've had constant replies saying, oh, we're getting new hardware next year. Like that, no. Like, will people click on that stuff? Yep. People will click on that stuff more than software. But the thing is, it's not happening. It's not. People can clip this, by the way. In 2023 and 2024, we will not see mid-gen refreshes. Could we see alternate consoles like, I don't know, a disc driverless X, or maybe a revision of the chipset where it looks exactly the same on the outside, but it's slightly cooler and all that stuff? Yeah, but those aren't mid-gen refreshes. Like, what's your thought on the whole, like, mid-gen refresh? By the way, the talk, a year and a half into the generation.
Yeah, I think it's laughable, honestly. That's pretty ballsy of them to just put it out there that and that just shows a lack of insight into the gaming industry. I'm like, you think after all this effort and how these things are flying off the shelves, they're so hard to get, people are either having to fight scalpers or bots or stand in horrible lines, and like people finally get one and then they're just going to turn around and immediately make a refresh when there is a chip shortage. There's still lockdowns, shutdowns, other things in some countries, part of the world, all this other stuff. And the fact that they think it would already just turn around just like that is just laughable to me. Like, we're years away, not a year or two, we're years away from a refresh.
Yeah, I mean, us being close to a refresh talk, and here's the thing, hardware talk gets people excited, right? Like, hardware is a fun thing to talk about, but it's a year and a half into the generation. Developers aren't even using the hardware we've got. Like, development kits for PlayStation and Xbox, they aren't reached their maximum potential yet, right? So at the beginning of a generation, you see games that look good, but later in the generation, the same hardware, you're seeing even better games because developers are getting used to the hardware and they can get more out of them. We are not even seeing a small percentage of what these consoles can do. We still have cross-generation games for the most part. Developers aren't getting the most out of them. So that isn't even a thing. Talking about mid-gen refreshes right now is literally pointless. They don't exist and won't exist. And honestly, I think of all generations, this generation doesn't need them. The adoption of 4K was a thing halfway through last generation. It made sense. There's no, like, people aren't buying 8K televisions. You can buy an 8K television for what, like $6,000 or something? The adoption isn't out there. The 8K content isn't out there. Like, there's no reason to invest in 8K right now. Literally not. Unless you have money in your wallet that's like burning a hole in it. I get it, but there's no reason to. So talking about these mid-gen refreshes right now makes no sense. It makes no sense. Microsoft and Sony can't get out the hardware they want. So what, they're going to come out with a mid-gen refresh while we're in a chip crisis? That makes no sense. And if they did, ballsy, brave, and also stupid. It's not happening. Like, when I say places like GameSpot and that talking about this, it's like, really? You're using that for clicks? Like, I'm not. And the thing is, if people want to make YouTube content on that stuff, that's all good. Like, but it's very unrealistic to talk about mid-gen refreshes a year and a half into the generation. Developers aren't getting the tools they need to get the best out of these consoles just yet. The developers are still making last generation games. Like hell, it even came out yesterday that Sony are going to have games on PlayStation 4 till 2025. We don't need to talk about mid-gen refreshes. It's silly. Stop it. Like, it's not happening. The amount of people that have replied to my posts telling me that, oh no, we're getting new hardware next year. It's all good. Like, no, stop it. It's not happening. Um, on the hardware talk, it recently came out from Jez from Windows Central, and I'll actually post the link in the description once we're done. That Microsoft are coming out with a streaming stick or puck. You've heard of this, right, Logan?
Yeah, the Xbox Puck that they're looking at to kind of be their almost like Roku stick type thing, plug and play, or potentially an app that you could pair with a TV like a Samsung or a smart TV and just download and have Game Pass and a controller ready to go.
Yeah, and Microsoft's actually had rumored for multiple generations now of them putting out a small console, but it's just never happened. And when I say a small console, I just mean a small console that does something different. Like, the streaming puck thing has been a rumor for about, I want to say 5 years. Again, I'll post Jez's article in the description. But, like, it seems likely. The thing is, the thought of a television app kind of makes sense if you think about it. Everyone has a television, just put the app out there. But you have less latency when it comes to a puck or a box, right? Because not all televisions have the same Bluetooth standard or wireless standard. So if they have a little tiny box, apparently the size of a deck of cards, that you can just plug an Ethernet into and pair a controller with, that would sell really well. And I think it'd be cool to have like multiple of those in a house if you just don't want to buy multiple Xboxes for the same house. And it makes sense. Like, again, I'm not going to elaborate too much on it. In the streaming space, a box makes sense. I think that was one of the failures for Google Stadia, is that they had their streaming thing, but it wouldn't work properly on all of the Google streaming sticks or whatever they are. But yeah, a puck or a deck of cards size box makes sense. I think it's pretty cool. I'd actually get one. But yeah, it looks very likely. Again, I'll post Jez's article in the description. But like the small Xbox rumor thing's been going around since the Xbox 360 generation. I remember towards the end of the 360 gen, Microsoft was working on a 360 mini that would actually just play indie games. But that means they would have a different GPU, different CPU set to work with, and it would just for back then, and like working with like Power PC tools, it would have just been really complicated. There was a lot of Xbox products we never got. There was going to be an Xbox smartwatch that never became a thing. I think that was cancelled in 2013. So yeah, but it looks like the streaming stick or puck is going to be a thing. I think I'd buy one. I think it's a cool idea, and it would work, especially considering Amazon, Roku, Apple, pretty much all have their own boxes out. But yeah, that looks cool. And again, I'll post Jess's article in the description. Now, I want to talk about the summer showcase. So it basically came out, a few weeks ago that Starfield got delayed, and everyone lost their mind. But ever since it got delayed, people have been wondering like, when are we going to see it, right? And I keep seeing people thinking that it's the footage we're going to see has been delayed, and it's like that makes no sense. Like, they've been hyping up Starfield for months. A game delayed does not mean they're going to not show it at the summer showcase. Like, Logan, you're probably in the same boat as me, and you're fully expecting Starfield gameplay on June 12th.
Yeah, I'd expect some Starfield gameplay. Probably not like a huge, just like the focus of the event anymore, but I definitely think we will be seeing some of it and Redfall at the showcase.
Yeah, I think, will things have been changed slightly? Obviously, uh, release date cards, probably like, the amount of stuff they'll show, but I think we'll see at least 5 minutes of gameplay, at least. The thing about Bethesda is that whenever they show off an RPG, it's not long after they announce it, but the release isn't that long after. But with Starfield, that thing was announced back in 2016, with the logo. So we've all known about it for a while, but we saw in-engine teaser footage last year. Trust me, right now, people will see gameplay at the June 12th showcase. So anyway, past week has been Star Wars Celebration. And, a lot of people, Star Wars fans, we've been itching for more content. And yeah, we pretty much predicted this on the show. I've been talking about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order sequel for the past 6 months. We got a trailer for it on Friday, and it's called Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It's a follow-up. It's set 5 years after the ending of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and it was a cool teaser trailer. Again, we're going to see more this year. They didn't specify if it was going to be over summer. I think we might see something during the Xbox Summer Showcase, or either, Jeff Keighley's award thing. But yeah, what was your thoughts, Logan, on the whole Jedi Fallen Survivor thing? Because you loved Fallen Order as well, right?
Yeah, it was my game of the year when it came out. Awesome. The Souls-like combat in the Star Wars universe, the way they handled the lore, the gameplay, the traversal, characters, story, everything. It was brilliant. And I love the trailer for Survivor. Looks like it's gonna be some hard times for Cal. Looks like it. Looks like he's in not a great spot right now. I'm super excited to see who that is in the back of the tank, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and like this is like basically the start of like these next gen and third party games we're going to be seeing, because it's cutting off last generation. It's probably going to be one of the biggest games when it comes out. And the thing is, 2023 is already looking good. We have Starfield, Suicide Squad, Killer Justice League, and you know things like Star Wars Jedi, Fallen Survivor. But yeah, it looks cool. The premise sounds good, and if people haven't played it, play the original. It's in EA Access, or should say EA Play, and it's in Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Like, in my opinion, it's one of the best Star Wars games ever made. It's up there with KOTOR. Is the story as good as KOTOR? No, but the fact that they have these sort of callbacks to the original trilogy as well as the prequels, it's just, I don't know. It's a very well done game in a time where people didn't think we would get single player Star Wars games from EA. Like that. Basically, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is the game that made EA realize, oh yeah, we can make money in single player games. That's why Mass Effect is apparently moved back to Unreal Engine. That's why Dragon Age completely dropped the multiplayer stuff. So like that game did a lot of good, and the fact that it did so well, it was the second biggest selling game of the year from the year it released. So from November 2019 to November 2020. Like, COD was number one, and Jedi Fallen Order, a single player game without microtransactions or expansions, was number two. That was huge. And, it sold over 10 million copies. Absolutely massive. And I bloody love that game. Like, I played it a lot. The sequel's probably going to be even better. I just hope, right? I just hope that we don't have a desert planet. Like, because as a Star Wars fan, I'm kind of getting sick of sand. Like,
It's coarse and rough and gets everywhere, man.
yeah, and it's like, like I get it. Mandalorian, sand planets, I get it. Obi-Wan, that makes complete sense, but I need something that's not a sand planet. Like, and the thing is, if it has a sand planet, am I not going to buy it? No, I'm day one buying it. It could have 4 sand planets and I'll still buy it, but it's like, I don't want sand planets. Like, I can't deal with this stuff anymore. As a Star Wars fan, and here's the thing, it's probably just because all the restrictions and stuff doing the sand planet stuff makes sense, but, with them making so much money off the original, I expect, and considering it's next gen only, I think we'll see planets like Coruscant in the game, like, to fully take advantage of, like, next gen hardware, to have, all those, like, tall buildings and moving cars in the background and stuff. Like, I think we could see planets like that. They kind of teased that it would be, set on different kinds of planets. Again, you were talking about who was the clone, or whoever was in the tank. Yeah, lot of mystery surrounding that game, and yeah, we should be seeing more soon, hopefully. Anyway, before we move on, I just want to say that with the Activision Bethesda thing, or should I say Activision Blizzard thing, has been moving along slowly. There's been more and more rumors coming out that the deal could be done by November. That's debatable, but more and more rumors keep coming out. And bear in mind, I'm doing air quotes. I don't know if these are real. There's been rumors that Microsoft is looking to get Game Pass, or should I say Call of Duty and Game Pass this year. Now, people will bring up the marketing rights or marketing deal with, Sony. That hasn't stopped other games in the past. Microsoft has had, or should I say, Sony has had in their contracts before that if you sign a deal with them, that game can't go on Game Pass. They had that for, I believe it was Resident Evil 8. That game couldn't be in Game Pass because they signed a deal with them. There's no proof that that deal exists for Call of Duty, right? That they can't put games in Game Pass because they have a marketing deal. Hell, MLB The Show, a game developed by Sony, is in Game Pass. So, what are your thoughts, Logan, on the whole? Like, could Call of Duty be in Game Pass this year? Because if it is, that's one of the biggest news things this year. Because Call of Duty sells over 15 million copies every single year. That launching in Game Pass would be the biggest news, probably.
Yeah, I even tweeted about it the other day that, like, everybody was understandably upset about, Starfield being punted to next year. Like, you have 20 something studios and there's not a major title coming out day one in this quarter. What are we doing? Yada, yada, yada. Hypothetically, if you were able to get the deal done in time, where you could launch Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 into Game Pass, I mean, there's your Starfield equivalent. To be honest, it might be even bigger. Because of, the casual audience, everybody globally, you get it in there and it's just boom. Just the biggest title of the year is ready to go. And Special Nick on Xbox Era had a good point on this the other day on his podcast that um, the contract for this was probably written at a time when Game Pass wasn't a thing or was in its infancy where there wasn't day one major titles to where maybe like Resident Evil 8 was recent enough to where it included like Game Pass is a thing, we don't want you on Game Pass. But there is a decent chance that this might have been written before that to where it could still come to Game Pass. Not saying it will, but I wouldn't write it off as heresy to say it could. And I do think that Sony does have marketing for Call of Duties and stuff, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, if you own game, shouldn't you be able to put it on your subscription service even if someone else has marketing? Or am I mistaken there? I don't know. It's an interesting idea, and I think it would be just gangbusters if they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. And again, if it was something that definitely couldn't happen, I think we would definitely know by now. And hell, all we know about the next Call of Duty is just a few logos and the characters in the game. So we should be seeing more over the next few weeks. And I think Sony's event is on Thursday, so maybe we'll see Call of Duty then. Anyway, before we finish off the show, it just came out this new article that the June Xbox update allows gamers to be able to see secret achievements. That's pretty interesting because like sometimes you can't really be bothered to go to a third party website and try and look for those specific achievements, because remember when you look online for secret achievements, you don't know which ones you're missing unless you've like really looked. So yeah, it looks like we're going to be able to just like click a button to see the secret achievements. Now some of those are obviously for story related purposes, like, because again achievements can spoil story elements in games. But yeah, pretty cool update. What's your thoughts, man?
I'm happy. It's long overdue to me. I'm really happy with it, and I hope the June update also makes it to where it used to be you could just easily hop to your achievements for a certain game, but now like several of the games I have to go to the game card and then have to scroll over to achievements and then go down and look at them. Where it used to be you could just click a game and go to achievements and look at it. Hopefully they go back to that way as well. But secret achievements being able to be revealed is a good thing. It's always been a pain having to look them up. I get why they've been hidden for story purposes, especially. There are a few things that suck more than you're scrolling to try to find one achievement and then you're like, oh crap, I didn't know that character got axed off in the third act. Well, guess I do now. So I get why they hide them, but being able to, say, I already know what happened story, I just want to see some other achievements, is good.
Yeah, I mean this at least shows that they still adding on features, because people have thought for the longest time, like, have they completely given up hope or development on, like, you know, future updates for achievements and things, and the fact that you can unlock secret achievements, it's a good sign. Like, sometimes if a game doesn't really have a particularly interesting story, I will look up the achievements to see if I'm going to miss any. And this is really going to help achievement hunters, because again, there's still a lot of achievement hunters out there. They won't have to bother going back and forth between third-party websites. It's a good sign and cool. You know, we'll probably see more feature stuff over the summer, you know, of Xbox showcase and stuff. Anyway, that's it for today. We've had like pretty long show today, about an hour 40 minutes. My throat has been hurting the entire time because I've been speaking all day, but we'll be back next week with a lot of things to talk about. Anyway, the chat's been awesome today, aside from the exact same bot that shows up every same week. But yeah, Logan, have you got anything interesting coming up?
Not at the moment, man, but always in the works.
Okay, cool. Again, chat's been awesome. I just want to say that, you know, my YouTube partnership has actually came in. So I'm finally partnered with YouTube now. If people do want to support the channel in future, super chats are now live. But if you want to share the content, it always helps out anyway. So if you want to share, please like, share, and subscribe. Always helps that stuff. I've got more content coming out this week. Last week's video got kind of, how should I put it, claimed by YouTube, but I had to re-edit it, but it's all good now. Anyway, I have a good video coming out this Thursday. Been working hard on it for weeks. Next week's YouTube video will be out about next Thursday as well. But again, we're back to weekly content after many delays for technical issues. And again, All Things Xbox podcast will be back next Tuesday, unless something, you know, random changes. Anyway, follow us on Twitter. Our links will be in the description down below. I will put Jez's article also in the description down below. Anyway, everyone's been awesome. Stay cool. We are out. Peace.